And always really an honor when I have time to sit down with Murray Sabrin. He's a professor emeritus of finance at Ramapo College in New Jersey, the author of a couple of books, but I have to tell you his autobiography is a fascinating and very inspiring read. It's called From Immigrant to Public Intellectual, An American Story. So you may want to check out his book again, From Immigrant to Public Intellectual. He does have a website, Murray Sabrin, sabrin.substack.com. And there's a picture of his landing page right there. Check that out as well. Professor, good to see you again, friend. How are you?
Great to be with you, Perry, on the eve of, well, close to the eve of July 4th, the biggest holiday of the year.
Yes. You know, I want to ask you a quick question. What's your take, given your background and your story, what's your take of socialism?
Well, socialism probably has destroyed more lives in the history of the world than any other philosophy. We have to remember, not only do you have the Soviet Union with its socialism, communism, that killed tens of millions of its own citizens, but you then also had the National Socialism of Germany under Hitler. Remember, the Nazi Party was called the National Socialist Party. And that's what Nazism is all about. So they're two sides of the same coin. Government domination of the political, social, cultural, and economic lives of its citizens. And it's really an anti-human philosophy. And that's why Marx was so adamant in wanting to destroy the family, the community, and putting everything into the hands of an elite. Now, admittedly, Marx says the state should wither away, but under socialist economies, the state has so much power that the people are basically slaves to the political elites.
Okay, sorry about that. I got an airplane behind me, so a little noise. It'll go away here in a minute. What do you think about the rise of actually socialists for public office?
That just shows you how the public education system has failed its students, and talk about the values and philosophy that underlie the American Revolution. I mean, all you have to read is the Declaration of Independence, and it gives you the outline of what our rights are. They come from our Creator. The government is supposed to recognize those rights and protect those rights, and that's why we have the Bill of Rights. Government doesn't give us rights. It's supposed to protect our rights. Unfortunately, government, either domestically or overseas, have undermined our natural rights, which was given to us by our Creator, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't get any simpler than that. And once the socialist ideology came into being in the middle of the 19th century, it's just crept up and crept up and crept up. And the real irony in America, if you look at the 1912 Socialist Party platform of the presidential candidate, virtually everything has been enacted by both Democrats and Republicans.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think that there is a rise in America against socialism?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have so many organizations that are involved in that. I've been affiliated with the Mises Institute since 1982 when it was founded, one of the premier, if not the premier, free market organization. You have the American Institute for Economic Research, where I was a staff economist. They've been around since the 1930s. You have the Cato Institute, you have the Independence Institute, you have the Heritage Foundation, and others that have been promoting free market, limited government ideas. And those ideas are catching on, given the traffic they're getting on their websites. And it's the politicians that are always behind the curve, so to speak, because right now we have a system, Perry, where both Republicans and Democrats think there has to be a government safety net. And I've been arguing in my books, which are right in back of me, since the 1990s, that we can have free markets, limited government, and philanthropy that would take care of the most vulnerable people in our society, using the methods that our ancestors in the United States and all over the world used, which is what? Charity. Charity is not a demeaning thing. It's a method in which to help people through humane ways, called voluntarism.
Okay, sorry about that again. So I want to come back to, it kind of fits in here. The big, beautiful bill made it through the Senate. It's got a lot of problems. What's your 30,000-foot view first of the bill?
Well, the bill is what could be best described as the kitchen sink to public policy in Washington. Instead of voting on each of the components, whether it's taxes, whether it's spending, whether it's regulation, it's all put into the kitchen sink. The analogy that I would use, Perry, is imagine if you went to a restaurant, an expensive restaurant, and the meal was, let's say, $100, but there are half of the things that in that entree that you don't like, but you have to still pay $100 because there are things in that you don't like. That's the dilemma that members of Congress face, is they have to vote for things that they don't like, that are not helpful to the U.S. economy, but it's part of this big bill that basically just continues the current status quo. Of course, they're an extension of this 2017 tax cuts, which are very good. But the point is, you cannot manage the U.S. economy by spending money we don't have, and that's why we have a $2 trillion debt. And there's nothing in the bill that I see that addresses that issue. We've got to really address that, all the spending, both domestically and militarily and overseas spending, because we're spending money that has no basis in the Constitution. That's why I wrote that piece toward financial independence and a constitutional federal budget that's posted at the Mises Institute. And that, to me, that article, which is a shortened version of a longer article that will be published in a book next year, talks about what does the Constitution authorize the federal government to do? And Article 1, Section 8 spells out in great detail what those activities are, and most of the federal budget is not authorized by the Constitution. That's the crisis we're facing in America today.
Do you think is there any substance to the idea that this bill will stimulate the economy so much that then you can properly account for bringing down the debt?
Well, government spending is not something that stimulates the economy. What it does, it transfers money from the producers to the tax recipients. What produces wealth is capital investment. It's capital investment that drives production, and production increases the supply of goods and services, which would cause prices to go down. And instead, we have the Fed that thinks that they can manage interest rates in conjunction with the federal debt and spending, and to give us a better economy. But anyone who studies economics will know that government spending is a drain on the economy, because you need tax collectors that don't produce anything of value. You need bureaucrats that don't produce anything of value. All they do is take money collected from the by the Treasury and then shifts it around throughout the bureaucracy and then hands it back to the people at a great discount. So again, if we want to have a humane society and the federal government confined to what it's supposed to do, which is protect our borders and make sure we have enough military to protect us from any foreign adversaries. Right now, we have a bloated domestic and foreign policy expenditures, and that's why we'll never get the debt down, because there's no projection that we're going to be in balanced budget or surpluses over the next several decades, and that's why this debt is scheduled to go to, what, $50 trillion in the next decade. And if you just do a 4% interest on that debt, you're talking about $2 trillion a year just in interest on the national debt.
So what do you think of the Fed's handling of the rate?
Well, the Fed funds rate is not that important. What's important for the economy is the 10-year Treasury note, which the Fed doesn't control. That's a free market rate that's based upon supply and demand. That mortgages are key off of that 10-year Treasury note, which is roughly about 4.25% today. So mortgages are around 6.25%, 6.5% for the 15 and 30-year mortgages. The Fed funds rate is just a way of the Federal Reserve manipulating short-term interest rates and pumping money into the system. So when they pump money into the system, rates tend to go down. When they stop pumping money in or withdraw money from the banking system by selling Treasury assets, rates go up. The Fed manipulates interest rates, which is not what the mission should be of the Federal Reserve. That was not the original mission in 1913 when the Federal Reserve Act was passed. The Federal Reserve Act gave the Fed three important missions, which they haven't been able to do two of them. One is maintain the purchasing power of the dollar, and my Substack today, which will be posted later on, shows the purchasing power of the dollar has lost 95% since the Fed was created. So the Fed has done a miserable job in one of its tasks, maintain the purchasing power of the dollar. It certainly hasn't smoothed out the business cycle, which is not natural to the market economy. The Fed causes the business cycle. by, again, manipulating interest rates. And it's a lender of last resort, which does quite well because it props up banks and the financial system, which is a tenuous system because of fractional reserves.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get my head around, Professor, given your understanding of the economy and how it should work and making America, financially independent, I get it. I really do. I'm trying to figure out how in today's cluttered economy, how would we start what you're saying when this bill apparently does give hope for capital growth? It's going to continue. It's going to continue the previous tax cuts from 2016. It's going to not tax Social Security, not tax overtime, not tax tips. I mean, there's a few things in there that are pretty good. I don't know what it does with the inheritance tax or capital gains. I mean, those two need to be addressed. But it's a start, isn't it?
Oh, there's no question about it. I'm all for tax cuts. I'm also for spending cuts, and there's really no general spending cuts. There are specific programs that may have less money spent than the previous year, but we're still way above what the spending was before COVID hit in 2020. If you look at the trajectory of the federal budget, it has increased dramatically since 2020. In fact, both Republicans and Democrats have voted for these expenditures, and they're responsible for this problem. The growth in spending takes money out of the private sector, which could be better used for capital investment, and that's really what drives the economy. So again, I don't see anything in the budget bill or the big beautiful bill that addresses spending in a systematic way. The military is getting more money. We're spending money on overseas on bases that don't do anything to protect us from any foreign adversary. David Stockman, the former budget director under Reagan, has outlined in his columns how we could have a much smaller military that'd be more effective than what we have today, which is really spending money on countries' defenses, which is not the responsibility of the American people and the federal government. Every nation is responsible to protect its own citizens. We are not the policemen of the world, and that's an issue that needs to be discussed openly and thoroughly in this country.
Did DOGE have any effect? I mean, it exposed a lot of stuff, but did it find root anywhere?
Well, what it exposed is the spending that is just unauthorized. I mean, spending on programs all over the world. I mean, the United States has become sort of the sugar daddy for the rest of the world, where other countries are dependent upon U.S. taxpayer money for programs that have, very little value to the American people, let alone the people of their own countries. These are the boondoggles that are the low-hanging fruit that should be eliminated immediately. What also should be eliminated, which would stop a lot of the contentiousness that's going on college campuses, is there shouldn't be any federal aid to colleges and universities. Many colleges and universities have built up endowments. They should be using that for student scholarship, faculty research. Colleges and universities are nonprofit institutions, so that means their donors get a tax break. We need to expand the nonprofit sector, which is the colleges, universities, the hospitals, the local health clinics, libraries, and other institutions that get their money by raising it through charitable means. That is the quintessential American way to deal with all these issues, rather than creating these huge bureaucracies in Washington, at HHS, at HUD, at Commerce Department, at all these other agencies that just suck the American people dry and use it for crony programs.
One other quick question before I take a break. Do you think we'll ever go after and corral the NGOs?
Well, again, I've advocated eliminating all government grants to NGOs, to state and local governments. The people at the local level should know exactly what it costs to run their government, not through subsidies by the federal government, but the state and local government should be able to raise money from their own citizens for all the needs that they have at the state and local level.
I get it. How in the world, then, can we advance socialism? Because socialism only works with the advancement of government.
Well, this is the conundrum I think we're facing in this country, is that people believe that it's the government's responsibility to manage the economy, to provide subsidies when they're in trouble financially. The problem is the government causes all these problems through the boom bust cycle, through overspending, through overregulation. And this is why the free market system has been the greatest anti-poverty program in the history of the world, because it makes possible higher living standards wherever it's tried, whether it's in small places like Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and now in Vietnam. Even though they have a communist government, they still have a lot of free market activity going on there. And we're starting to see this in Cuba to some degree as well. So the evidence is overwhelming, yet that message is not getting through the people who are studying this in schools. And of course, the politicians don't care about it because their power depends upon giveaways to the public.
Yeah. All right, let me take a quick break. Check out the professor's website, murraysabrin.substack.com. And you can check out his message there and his other books. And for sure, get a copy of his autobiography, From Immigrant to Public Intellectual, An American Story. It is really inspiring. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, and always an honor to have with us Professor Murray Sabrin, Professor Emeritus of Finance there at Ramapo College in New Jersey, author of quite a few books dealing with the economy. And let me encourage you to check out his website where you can get a copy of those, murraysabrin.substack.com, and you can stay up with his latest articles and publications as well. Check out his personal autobiography, fascinating, inspiring, From Immigrant to Public Intellectual, An American Story, and it is an inspiring one. So, Professor, it's been said that the interest rate on the debt and the public mandates are the noose around our neck. Can we unmandate mandates?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I would consider a real boon to the U.S. economy is we give young people out of the Social Security and Medicare system and let them invest their own income instead of having to send that money to the government, which is not invested for them, but it basically pays off current recipients, and they can build up a 401k and a health savings account over their lifetime, and they would be financially independent when it comes to retirement. This is a simple fix we can do, and I wish the president would start thinking outside the box about how to de-socialize, if you will, the U.S. economy, because, again, Social Security and Medicare have no constitutional foundation, even though it's been ruled constitutional by Supreme Courts. But if you look at the Article 1, Section 8, there's no authority to create these programs, and same thing with Medicaid. So those are the three big programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, that we can phase out as quickly as possible without hurting anybody. And that's the approach that I take in my essay toward financial independence and a constitutional federal budget. We need to make sure the current recipients get paid off, young people, and we consider young people college graduates to maybe in their 40s. They can get out of the Social Security and Medicare system and build up their own nest eggs for retirement. That is what it means, I think, to be a responsible, financially independent adult. Save for the needs that you want. Those needs could be short term, which would be spending and rent or mortgage or a car payment, and then long term, putting money aside so you can have money when you need it, when you no longer are working. That, to me, is the essence of being a financially independent human being.
So why hasn't either party been able to be financially responsible? And I realize that's a big philosophical question, but you kind of wonder, it's obvious. Why haven't we done this?
This is the $64,000 question, and I think the answer is philosophy and ideology. It began in the late 19th century with the progressive movement in Wisconsin and other states. Young economists who studied in Prussia came back to the United States and were lording over the welfare state of Bismarck's Prussia. And those ideas started permeating through the colleges and universities. Woodrow Wilson was taught by these professors, and other people were taught by them in the late 19th, early 20th century. And this is the concept of how ideas spread through society. Somebody comes up with an idea, it's rejected, but it's still being embraced by their true believers. And then as time goes on, these ideas get accepted through the media, through books and speeches, and people start embracing them. And then Robert Higgs, in his important book, uh, Crisis in Leviathan, points out every time there's a crisis, people look toward the government to solve that problem. And the best example would be the Great Depression, where people looked toward Washington to solve their economic problems when the government caused the Great Depression. And so his thesis from that magnificent book, Crisis in Leviathan by Robert Higgs, outlines how step by step the federal government has encroached on things that have historically been done by individuals, families, and communities, and sometimes local governments. Instead, we have this huge, massive welfare state that increased in my lifetime in 1965. We're coming up to the 60th anniversary of Medicare and Medicaid, the 90th anniversary of Social Security this summer. So these three programs need trillions of dollars every year to pay for the beneficiaries. And what I contend is that we could phase these out so the people in America can have the income that they need in order to take care of themselves, their family, and help people in their community through philanthropy, so we can move people out of Medicaid. And I wrote an open letter to Bill Gates on my Substack, pointing out that how he and his fellow billionaires can literally eliminate the Medicaid budget by creating these nonprofit medical centers throughout the country.
Yeah, it seems so reasonable. You know, the other display of this is FEMA. FEMA seems to turn out to be an amazing disaster. And what you have here is you have organizations like Samaritan's Purse now that can respond quicker, faster, and more effective than FEMA. I mean, there's a living example that a federal agency is there to help people under emergency can't get out of the way of itself.
It's interesting they use the word disaster for FEMA, because they're supposed to address disasters, yet they don't in a humanitarian and cost-effective way. And this is why it's important. When I was doing personal financial management, investment management, one of the first things we advocated or recommended to clients is they have 6 to 12 months of living expenses in savings, because life is full of unexpected emergencies, and that's the way you have an emergency account to deal with these things. Well, the same thing with communities. People can get together in their local community, pool their resources together, have somebody manage them, a fiduciary, whether it's a local bank or a major financial institutions like Fidelity or Charles Schwab or T. Rowe Price, and that money can grow, and every year they pay into the pool of money. That's what real insurance is all about, by the way. People pool their money collectively, and then when there's a need, the money gets paid out. And so we shouldn't have the government do it, because they do a bad job at managing these funds. So people can do it on a voluntary basis. In fact, that's how people did everything before the Great Depression. It was called mutual aid societies, where mutual aid societies even provided unemployment help to people. There was no government program before the Great Depression. People provided medical care, housing, and other things. We have Habitat for Humanity does a great job. These are the nonprofits that we should be applauding, that the people should know about. And by cutting taxes, people will have more resources to help people in their community.
Okay, just back to the big, beautiful bill just for a moment. It looks like it's going to pass. In the middle of this, the House did come up with a $9.2 billion additional tax cuts. I don't know where that one has gone. I guess it's working its way through. Did you have a chance to look at that, and was it significant?
I think there was sort of a revenge tax. I don't know the details of it. I think it was something having to do with what happened several years ago in the Biden administration or the Obama administration. The point is, I'm always in favor of cutting taxes, but in conjunction, spending should be cut. Otherwise, you're going to expand the budget deficit and increase the national debt. That's the problem with Republicans. Rates were cut during the Reagan administration, but spending kept on going up, and the budget deficits were endemic throughout the 80s when we had a strong economy. And in the 90s, we finally, at the end of the 90s, Bill Clinton got a balanced budget because the Republicans controlled the Congress, and they forced Clinton to reduce the growth of spending. And you had 3 years of balanced budgets or minor surpluses. And then Bush came in and gave us war and gave us more spending, and the budget exploded. And then under COVID, the budget exploded under Trump, and then under Biden. And so it's not a partisan issue. This is a fundamental philosophical issue. What should be the role of government in a free society? And that's the debate I want to have in this country as we approach the 250th anniversary of the birth of America.
Yeah, good stuff. So at the end of the day, I want to be careful here, but it doesn't appear to be that this is sustainable. I mean, we keep kicking the can down the road. We keep raising the budget limits and all these things. What's your take? I mean, when do we hit the wall here, Coach?
We hit the wall, I think, when foreigners no longer buy our debt, or the debt becomes so huge that the Federal Reserve will step in and buy a lot of this debt. That's called monetizing the debt by creating money. That money enters the economy, and then prices we're off to the races with double-digit inflation, or possibly even triple-digit inflation. So this is what the reckoning that's coming, and I submit we're in worse shape than we are today than we were in 1929, where the budget was basically balanced, but we had a huge depression because once the economy rolled over because of the Fed's easy money policies throughout the 1920s, Hoover did everything wrong to try to prop up the economy, and then Roosevelt just continued his policies, and that's why the Depression lasted more than a decade.
All right, let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out his website, murraysabrin.substack.com. It's a great way to stay connected with him. Murray Sabrin, SABRIN.substack.com. Get a copy of his personal book, From Immigrant to Public Intellectual, and check out his articles as they come available. Professor, thank you. It's always a delight to have you, sir. Let's stay connected.
Great to be with you, and happy Independence Day to you and your listeners.
You too.